Can anyone catch them, do you think?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, unbelievable. We didn't expect that.
As unbelievable as it sounds, this is another Arsenal podcast. That is the Away Gunners podcast. We bring news and reaction from Arsenal fans from all over the world. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Away Gunners podcast. Actually, this is going to be a little bit of a reintroduction kind of a pod, where we are reintroducing Arun with his own podcast of Vada London. Arun, tell us about your pod a little bit before we move on to Bob.
Well, as you might know from the name, Vada London, it's about Arsenal. It's about showing that we are the biggest team in North London. So Vada London basically stands for North London. And it was then we wanted to have a name. Of course, you guys might have known because you've also been a speaker with our pod. We were previously branded as Yo PR Arsenal Podcast, and I don't know if it was the time that we kept the name for the podcast. Alba hasn't performed at all. So the guilt was too much for us to handle.
You guys were the reason for jinxing it.
we didn't need anyone to come and point fingers at us. We did that for ourselves. We needed a bit of self-realization, and we did that. And we realized that we'll actually take the jinx out by removing the name. And we thought this name would be a really good option since it was in line with our pop culture reference. So basically, it's a podcast that we do in our native language, which is Tamil, with a lot of pop culture references, a lot of banter, and try to make it as informal as possible. A few people discussing the travails of the team in their living room. So that's the whole idea. So we'd love it if the people who know Tamil who are listening to this podcast can give it a shout. And thanks a lot for the shout out, Vijay.
Yeah, I'll add the link in the description.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Bob, are you doing any other podcast apart from our own The Away Gunners?
I have to consider myself lucky to be invited for one.
And there is also another...
because also you and I have a lot of time in our hands. Bob doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot more time than you both. All family men, and then there's this, the single guy who just goes about his business. But also we are informing about our FPL pod, which is actually a separate entity, but it's also part of the Away Gunners. We are doing it across team. It's not just Arsenal. So our FPL podcast would be having a lot more stuff to do. If you haven't joined the podcast or if you haven't joined the league, please do join, because we are planning to have some goodies and gifts and all those other things with the FPL podcast. So
if I may add one more thing for the FPL podcast, I don't think the three of us here are experts, and I don't think we ever claim to be so, but and that's how we place our views. But the person who is actually presenting the FPL podcast is an expert at what he does. So even if you don't trust us, guys, I would suggest that you trust him more than what you trust us. So if you want to do FPL, you need to know it, learn it from someone who's been at the top for 5-6 years running, and that's the guy who's presenting it. So please do give it a watch.
Definitely. That's a very good point to be made. So I'm linking the FPL podcast link and the FPL code in the description too. So any guys, if you want to join, we still have a week, I guess, before everything kicks off at the time of recording this. So hopefully everyone joins, and we'll move on with the topics for today. So we are still talking about transfers. We are still discussing transfers, as we have less than 20 days left in this transfer window. And the game week is about to start. So this is kind of when things move along. But before we start with names and what is happening in the transfer window, Bob, I just want to check with you regarding something, right? Where I want to check about the whole process of transfers. Especially since now the market and the whole view with Arsenal has changed. I have a couple of questions in that. First is we have been traditionally, or in the recent past, been known as the seller club. But seems like this transfer window, or even the last one, we are not able to sell a lot of players, right? Even now, if you consider, Roma bid for Xhaka for like 12 million or something, and we wanted 15, which is just 3 millions over, or like we might have wanted 20. We do, I mean, I'm just talking through my ass here. But Roma was not able to match that. But now Tammy Abraham, who is not even a regular starter at Chelsea, is being the transfer market news or rumor is that he's being touted for a 25 million move to Roma. And this has been happening all. Oh, wow.
35.
Wow. So this has been happening all over the transfer market, right? Where our best players, even when Mesut Ozil was with us, we were not able to offload him. We wanted to offload him, but we were not able to. And then Kolasinac. We know all the players that we have. Lacazette. We have all these players who are first team starters with Arsenal, whom we are not able to offload. Right? Is this a change in the way how Arsenal is looked at, or is this a financial side of it that is being represented here?
See, when it comes to addressing this question, right, in particular, there is no one single answer that I could think of. This problem, I would say, is a multifold one. There's several lot of issues that I can think of the way that we are at the moment. So one of the things is basically our management. That's actually the obvious thing that we could look at and then point fingers at. And I mean, it's quite right for us as fans to point to the management, because, you know, they are the ones responsible for selling their players, you know, both in and outs. They are responsible for making the deals happen. And for whatever reasons it's not happening, it's probably due to them. I mean, they have not been effective enough in trying to get a deal out of everything. Or possibly, you know, they have not been able to negotiate or come across to a consensus for a player to move forward at a time that he requests. So that's one thing. And then the second thing, again, at management, but for actually a different cause, you know, they are the ones who have been hyping up, or they are the ones who have jacked up all the player wages to an enormous amount that they are not able to get anywhere even half or even 70% or whatever of the player wages that the other team is willing to pay. And this is actually proving to be a much bigger stumbling block than actually the transfer fees being involved here. So, you know, if you actually look at players like Willock and you know, even Mesut Ozil in the last year as an example, just because of the wages, even though he is a talented player, I mean, and many of the teams would have really wanted to take him on, they couldn't really manage to get even pay half the wages that they could. So as a result, you know, I mean, we're not able to move anyone out. Third thing that I would really say is our fans, you know, as good as they are during the good times, as fickle as they can be during the worst times. That, I mean, and fans in the past have actually caused a lot of friction with a lot of players, and that actually gives out a lot of things in the open. It gives out a room for the other party to negotiate that your player is anyway not popular with the squad, and then he's not going ahead with the fans as well. Like, why don't you actually come down on your price? And that's what I could think of as a fan again, you know. So I possibly feel, you know, combinations of all these things together is actually pulling the transfer value down of every player that we want to move out. You know, a third obvious thing that I could really look upon is the player who are again on an enormous wage is not willing to move. I mean, he is happy to warm himself on the bench without offering himself a chance to go and play regular football again in another country or another team. That's what I could think of from my point.
Interesting. Regarding the wage that Bob has mentioned, Arun, but this is kind of becoming a league, English Premier League kind of issue, right? I mean, I can see two sides to it. Like, there is this Chelsea, Manchester City, who could afford wages which is very high, which is like even during Wenger days, they could afford wages which is very high. And if you remember, before Mesut Ozil, all our squad would never have touched even 200k per week. We have never heard Arsenal having a wage of any player having a wage of 200k per week before that. When everyone around us,
Socialist, we had a socialist structure.
yeah, so everyone around us, Chelsea and City and United, they had those kind of wages, over 200k, over 300k, 400k, and everything. And then Arsenal kind of thought that they've caught up. And now what is happening is other teams like Leicester or Aston Villa, or I'm actually sad to add Aston Villa to the list again, but Spurs or Liverpool, all these teams have lower wages. So if you consider, these teams are the ones that are able to sell their players where they have lower wages. So is this something that Arsenal needs to fix before they could move ahead? But even if they have to fix this, they are not trying to think along those terms, right? Giving Xhaka an extension with a higher wage. We signed Willian last year with a higher wage. So what is the whole point of all this?
You brought up two interesting points. During Wenger's times, yeah, we always had this socialist structure where like a guy like a Song or a Holding would be earning less than 50,000 per week, and the highest performer would probably be making 120,000 per week, and that's it, right? So and then came City and Chelsea. Like you said, they were jacking everything up, and we tried to compete with them by jacking up the wages, but we are not in the same league as they are. There is no place in the last 5 to 8 years that you would have found where we were competing for the same player as a Chelsea or a City or even a United. There was no point where we were actually competing for the same players. We were competing for different players, but we were playing the same wages. As to what like a United or a Chelsea or a City were playing for a better player. Like we were trying to entice people to coming in through the promise of higher wages that they would have likely to have gotten in any of these other clubs had they gone there. So that was our strategy. Now, this has left us with a group of overaged, mediocre players whose value seems to be going down, and so is their motivation as soon as they get like the last big contract, which is giving them unreal wages, which again, we are trying to match City, Chelsea, and the likes, which is not possible for a club like us, not because of our stature. Of course, we are one of the biggest clubs in the world still, and we'll still continue to be because of the brand that we built, but because of where we find ourselves right now in terms of financial responsibilities and how the club is run. We are not a club that where the owner injects money into the club. So we need to be sustainable. We sell, we get money, and using that money, we buy. That's what's happening most of the time now. When we increase these wages and these players with the increase in wage, the performance is dropping. It's like more of a double whammy when we are not able to push this player out. Plus, we are paying him like more than what any other club can afford to pay and would be willing to pay. So for us to be able to improve and be better, this is something that has to be addressed no matter what. I don't know how these guys are going to do it, but this has to be addressed, and they need to get better protocols in place, and maybe even people with better knowledge specific to transfers and specific to dealings, rather than having a former player who thinks he knows stuff. I might be like ranting about Edu, but it's just based on whatever has happened in the last 2-3 years. And even before that, when we had like Gazeta, same thing was happening. When we got Sanehi, same thing was happening. It was not like we were actually competing with clubs for players, and we were pipping them based on the promises that we would be winning, or based on the promises that you'd be able to play with much better players. No, money is a big motivating factor, and that's where we're hitting. I do not know how long we'd be able to sustain if we keep up with this approach. So it's not just about buying players. The biggest problem is when it comes to selling players. So it is definitely not a sustainable approach, and I hope we definitely change this, get people on merit, and actually not panic. For me, all of this comes about with like a huge round of panic, and that's what leads to players like Willian getting 180 for doing nothing. So I don't know when we are able to get ourselves out of this panic situation, but we need to do that as soon as possible and get a protocol in place.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
true.
one more point to add, actually. So, just touching upon Arun's, opinion there. There's been always this talk of people wanting to correct, the Arsenal management wanting to correct all the misgivings of the previous regime, only for them to fall into the same pit every window and window again. I mean, in their desperation, they started doing deals that they know that people are not able to move any player, and just fall into the same trap again. And like what Arun said, it's not against Edu or anyone, but he's not been effective enough in trying to build a blueprint for what we want to become. And I've not seen that happen so far. I mean, he came in last year and he got all the experienced players from relatively known teams like Bellerin and all those sort of players who have actually just come here and just struck. I mean, they have not worked out the way that they should. And now we don't have a plan B to move them out at the moment. We should have ideally been having a sporting director like Monchi, like even with Patarashi, who has joined Tottenham. I mean, I hate to say this, but he is a master tactician, and we need people like him behind the scenes who can actually work out deals. And he is a larger pull with whatever that we could do.
From what I can see regarding Arsenal, right? Like the Arun touched upon it and you touched upon it. It's all about the panic, right? We are a team which is supposed to be in the top 4, which is supposed to be in the top 4 of the league. But we have finished the last couple of seasons. I mean, we finished 5th, 6th, 5th, 8th, 8th. We don't even, we remember as a top 4, but we don't even remember the last time we finished in top 4. That's our team. That's where we are. And that is the panic. We want to get, like, let me put it this way, right? Arsenal were invited to Super League based on whatever we have accomplished in the past. If, for example, there is going to be a Super League in the next 5 years, Arsenal will not be invited to that based on the performance on the pitch or whatever.
Possible.
Right?
Yeah.
And now the owners and the management is panicking that we need to get ourselves back, because at the end of the day, there is going to be something that is going to come up, and we need to be there for something to come up for us to catch or get the money out of it. Right? That is what the management is thinking. And that is why the panic is happening, and they're buying all these, like.
But they don't want to put in a penny from their pocket. That's the thing. You're getting loans to fulfill all the deals, but yeah, I think it's not on them.
But again, like, how much of the blame can you put on the owners too? I'm not saying like I'm taking the side of the owners, yes, but we seem to be always in firefighting. Yeah. Firefighting mode happens only when you do not have something like to follow.
But that's
and you keep making mistakes that leads to the fire.
But that is the problem, right, Arun? The problem is that owners don't know the football. Owners don't know the club.
Yes,
so
they don't, and that's the reason why they have appointed someone like an Edu, who's supposed to be this guy who knows how to do stuff.
Yeah,
and that's because it's like, again, I'm not trying to take the owner's side here. I know doing that would earn the wrath of millions of fans, so I'm not going to do that.
I don't want to take millions that risk. Of fans, so it's fine.
No, the millions of millions of Arsenal fans. Yes, I'm still hoping we still have fans in the millions for Arsenal. Okay. So that's the thing, because I feel that, like, yeah, they are American owners. They know that they do not have a lot of knowledge about the club or about the game in itself, but the thing is, like, if you really think about it, it's been more than a decade since they took over, right? So I think by now they should have at least learned like what an offside is, or how to make transfers, or how they should be like putting money in. You would expect that, and I think that the fans' frustration comes from the fact that they haven't learned any of that, and probably Josh is trying now. And in my head, that's the reason why they appoint people to take care of transfers, so they can have like people who have the knowledge, who have probably played the game before, have been close to the game, close enough to know what needs to be done. I find that the people who have been appointed for that position have been continuously failing. So I do not know at that point, because if you really notice, whenever those players, those people who are supposed to be suggesting these players to us, have come up with something that is an absolute necessity, like Partey, for example, the owners have been willing to sanction the money. So I do not know if in other cases where the owners were not like, uh, how would you put it, trusting enough of the other options that these guys have put up, that they did not sanction any transfers, or I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. I really don't know what the reasons could be, because your owners are outsourcing that particular job. And when you outsource it, it's supposed to be done like in a really nice way, right? That is not happening. So is this a personal appointment thing that we should be blaming the owners for, or is it the people who are appointed who are supposed to be these like I know everything guys who are destroying everything, or is it like the owners who say, yeah, go for these guys even if they are in this price point, but we'll be offering more wages? So where does it all stem from? That's the problem for me. It's not about one particular person, it's about the entire structure that I find is flawed here.
I think the whole point of us not knowing what's happening in the club management side of it is what contributes to this confusion, right? Fans have no clue of who is in charge of what, who is doing what, and that is the whole point. But let's talk about the the management side of it and move on to a little bit of transfer news and everything that's been happening. So the big news with Arsenal right now is the sale of Joe Willock to Newcastle. Right. So,
I thought you were going to talk about the sale of Tammy Abraham to Roma and the team, how they refused to. They suddenly got 34 million, but they couldn't pay 15 million for Xhaka. Yeah.
No. I wish I could talk about that, but I don't want to dwell on like Roma, and especially when Mourinho is there. No, I'm not talking about that. No, I'm not.
That's a good stand.
Getting into the whole Mourinho thing. I hate Mourinho. If you guys don't know that. But regarding the sale of Joe Willock, Bob, right? Seems like a really good fee, and you have always been a person who have always said that if we get a good fee, 25 million is what they are bandying about. So if we get a good fee, you have always thought that we should sell him. Are you still on that point after this Partey's injury?
Bang on. Yes. It's actually a very good money that you could get at this point in time, much more than what you would have thought about at the start of the transfer window when we had players like Xhaka, Bellerin, and everyone for sale. 25 million at this point is really good. I think there is actually a sell-on as well added in there, so we could potentially get, if in case his value increases during his time at Newcastle. So it's a good deal for both parties, that I would say.
But do you think it's close to completion, or is this still a rumor? Or?
It's progressing. I think it's more likely closer to completion. So you could see in the post-match comments from Arteta as well that he wouldn't really want to talk about Willock because he would talk during an appropriate time. So more likely it's closer to completion. With Newcastle, they didn't have much options anyway. They just banked upon Willock to come and join them, and pretty much that would be the end of their window, I think. So, yeah, you could expect that to be closed.
Mm-hmm. Arun, any thoughts on Joe Willock moving?
Well, good luck. That's all I can say. We had a good time with you here. Good luck. I totally agree with Bob. I don't think we'd ever be able to command a fee more than 25 million. If you remember, like even a couple of years ago or even a year ago before the pandemic, I think his value was around 20-25 million. But if it is staying the same even during pandemic times, then that's like a jackpot for us, in my opinion, because we are not able to move anybody right now. More than the money, it's about the fact that we've been able to actually provide another opportunity for one of our academy graduates. So in my mind, it's another success. Like I told you guys last time, if it's not just about the players playing, if they're able to get us a good transfer fee, that's a huge success, which players like Eddie or Amen are not able to get first, So that is a huge success in my opinion. We cannot keep thinking about Nabri situations or Emi Martinez situations. Those two happen. But this at the right point in time, keeping the bigger perspective, bigger picture, I think this would be the right move. I do not think Joe Willock is going to have such a season that he's going to be like a Lampard and he's going to earn like 50 million transfer fee. If he does, good for him. I'll be happy for him as one of our former academy graduates. But this is probably the maximum that we're going to get for him. And this in a pandemic market is huge. 25 million in a pandemic market is huge.
Okay, let me put it this way. Okay, for me, the only concern at this whole Joe Willock thing is that if you consider what would be Joe Willock's contribution if he stayed at Arsenal, is maybe he will give you 5 goals per season, or maybe 2 assists, 5 goals maximum. That's his maximum contribution for a season that we could get out of Joe Willock, right? Would those 5 goals and 2 assists move Arsenal's team at least a few places in the table, right? And if we don't have Joe Willock, and with our rest of the squad players that we have, El Neni, Lokonga, like Lokonga will not be a squad player. He might be competing for the first choice. But if you consider El Neni, or if anyone else we are buying, whatever, right? Do you consider them making the same amount of impact for Arsenal in the table? Is that worth it? Anyone can pick that up.
I just want to remind you of the stats, Vijay. So basically, before Willock joined Newcastle, he's played 40 times for Arsenal and he's just scored 1 goal. So that 5 goals and all those sort of things don't exist. So honestly, I mean, he's a decent player, and possibly I think the reason as to why he's been let go is, I'm pretty sure, and I mean, our board would be shooting themselves in the foot if they are not actually signing an attacking player as his replacement. So I'm more certain that there will be an attacking player. Who that's going to be is a question. I think we have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and a plan D. But for now, I think the reason as to why he's being let go is due to the fact that we've identified someone as his replacement.
Arun, you made a great point about bringing in what's his name, Maitland-Niles into the discussion. Maitland-Niles into the discussion. Last season we had a 15 million bid for Maitland-Niles from Wolves, which we turned down. Now that seems like a very bad decision. Like, we should have taken that 15 million. We are never going to sell AMN for more than that. So is this
now nobody is offering 5 million for him, and then I don't want similar repeat with Joe Willock, and that's why I'm happy with him.
Interesting. Makes sense if you consider those points.
I just wanted to touch upon the reason as to why AMN is probably not able to muster a good transfer value. That's because of his own stance, So whenever he is actually, whoever is going to join, he wants to play a role in the midfield, and that's actually stopping a lot of teams from even going for him, because as much decent right back and all this versatility that he has, he's not one of the top bins, when it comes to the midfielders position. West Brom took him because they didn't really have anyone in that, and they were anyway going down, which they knew very well during Jan. So probably that's one of the factors in particular with Maitland-Niles, who is actually bringing his own value down, or he was not able to get a move that he would like to.
But we have to sell Maitland-Niles at some point. Do you see any future for him at Arsenal?
No, not some point. Not some point. There is no better point than this point. So it has to be this point.
We don't know, but I think that from our side, I think he is a must-go, and that's why it makes it more important that we handshake Newcastle properly and somehow get the deal done with Willock. If not now, then we'll never be able to get it done.
Yeah, I don't want us to be haggling over 1 million of add-on fee and then not making this transfer happen. That would be horrible.
So let me ask this question, right? We want to sell all our old guys, as in like Lacazette, Bellerin. It's not old.
Some young guys too. I mean, why
No,
just restrict it to
no. I'm just saying, like, if we could sell, say, Lacazette, if we could sell Bellerin, if we could sell Cedric, if we could sell,
it's funny you put Bellerin in the old people bracket. He's just 26. He stayed with us for so long.
Have you seen him run during the friendlies?
Yeah, he's old. Yes, I agree. At that point, yeah, he's old.
So if we could sell Willian, if we could sell all these older guys or like experienced guys, then we could kind of hold on to the Nkettias, the Holdings, the actual people who has some value in the market, right? It seems like only our younger folks have value in market, and our older folks have no values in the market. Like Kolasinac, none of them seems to have any value in the market. Do you see any of the people like Bellerin or like Lacazette or any of those, Willian, anyone moving around? Is there any possibility of anyone whom we actually want to sell moving this transfer window?
I think with Lacazette for sure, there is he might likely get sold, or we would do the complete opposite by offering a new deal with a higher wage, of course, towards the end of this window. Either of those should happen, because he's coming towards the last year of his contract, and for all the fee that we paid to get him in the first place, everything will be down the drain in 6 months. I mean, it's almost down the drain now, but still we could at least get something out, as a last sort of thing. Even that would actually come 6 months. So Lacazette for sure might actually get sold, and I think we are just waiting for late interest to start developing, although nothing has actually turned up so far. So is the case with Bellerin as well. His contract is as well ending in 2022, so which means that we could potentially offer him a new contract, or he would be getting sold in either way. Loan with an obligation to buy, or loan with an option, with a mandatory clause to buy, or whatever. That's more likely going to happen, because Inter knows that he is interested in them. He wants to go there, and they're both playing a hardball at us.
So that's the problem. Like, bringing back the question to Arun, right? So the problem for me is that none of the players generate interest from multiple clubs. It's like Xhaka wants to go to Roma. Roma has interest in Xhaka. Then Lacazette is linked to Lyon or Atletico. That's it. And Bellerin is linked to Inter. That's it. No other clubs want our players. So do you see any movements in the senior players? Like, there was talk about Kolasinac having interest from Turkey. What happened to that?
It's simple. It's simple, Picasso. Two things drive your transfer, right? Number one, it's your performances on the pitch. Number two, it's the money that you earn. Both points that we touched upon during our previous discussions. What's happening for us is like an unholy combination of bad performances and high wages. Even the interest that we got for someone like Xhaka, who probably had his best season last season, and a great Euro, which showed that he could be like a real hit in a place like Italy, where he has time and space on the ball. They were not able to cough up enough money to get his transfer. It could have been like the fees of the not just the fees, the wages were a stumbling block at that point. And that is probably the reason that we are not able to move someone like a Kolasinac, who hardly ever gets to play. Even during his loan time, he was not a hit at Schalke, the relegation-driven team. So if he's not able to put performances in when given the chances, and still is earning, 130K per week, how many teams can really afford to pay that for a washed-out player? So it's the teams that would
let me stop you. Even Arsenal cannot afford playing it. We are paying it.
Yeah, that's exactly. But that's the thing. It's like a bad marriage, right? Like we are forced to stay, but the other teams always have an option. They don't have to dip their leg into such sort of a situation, and they just try and stay away. You're asking me if we'll be able to move Willian? Definitely not. Like, who's going to pay 180k or 200k to Willian per week based on the performances that he put up last season in a league that he's extremely familiar with, and he didn't have to even move cities. When you consider all those factors, everything that we've done so far is against us. It's not, we do not need someone from outside to come and shit on us. We already are doing it ourselves. So when with all that, it's what is the thing that teams are going to look at when they try and buy our players? What is the parameters that they're going to judge our players by? We are not giving them anything. We are not making it easy in any way. So yeah, I mean, like it's again comes down to the point of bad recruitment and offering high wages. It's like a vicious cycle that seems to be keep on repeating itself, in spite of us saying that we need to learn from our past mistakes, which we don't seem to be doing. So it also reminds me of like an Indian politician's false promises at the beginning of every election. That's what it reminds me of.
But let's conclude the whole senior sales discussion. Bob, give me
again. That's what I'm saying. It's not just the seniors, because like even our youngsters, they are not even with the chances that they're given. Willock was the only one who actually performed well enough to get a transfer connection. Eamon had his chances at West Brom, but he didn't do anything that was able to even get us the 15 million that he was getting the season before, just based on a few sporadic performances off position. We even, in spite of playing in this preferred position, we're not able to get anything for him. Eddie was supposed to be the superstar at the under 21 level. We gave him a lot of chances last season, and a 20-year-old is not able to get any sort of a fee. Forget about the 20 millions. No one even seems to be wanting him. Those are the things. I don't know if we are making a mistake by offering like too many chances to certain guys, not offering chances to other guys. So it's really, I do not see any of these guys leaving.
But I heard somewhere that Eddie has some interest from, I don't know which club is it. Newcastle? No, not Newcastle.
Brighton were the ones.
Yeah,
Brighton.
Yeah, so both Brighton and Crystal Palace, they want striker each. Mm-hmm. Brighton more likely, or one of them is actually going for that Edward guy from Celtic.
Hudson Edward, yeah.
Yeah, Hudson Edward. Yeah, so which means that the other team might look into Nkettia towards the end of the window, but that also seems unlikely because I believe he is injured for about 3 weeks or so. So which means that we won't be in a position to even take up a medical or go in for a transfer at this point in time.
But at least there is traction there, right? Like, I mean, and I also heard that Nelson has some traction from Crystal Palace or some other team, so some German team. So those are two players who have some traction on it. And the other news that I am hearing is regarding Holding, that some teams might be interested in going for Holding. What are your thoughts on that, Bob? Holding.
So Holding, I think there's been some rumors floating around that Holding is being used as a make weight for Madisson, just because of the fact that Fofana got injured during that preseason game against Villarreal. It's been looked at that we value Holding at 20 million, and they're looking at using Holding as one of the make weights to sweeten the deal, which is now at 60 million pounds for James Madisson.
And did you guys hear like our friend Brendan Rodgers saying that if Grealish costs so much, Madisson should cost the same, and he should be one costing 100 million?
So I think there is more likely possibility that Leicester would be okay settling in for 60 million for Madisson. And
do you see a player exchange being a part? Like, do you think we've been offering all these 4 players, we've been like offering Holding? Do you think they would like actually come down and take a player and reduce the fee, or they would just hold out for 60 million?
To be honest, the level of players that they're looking for, none of them that we are offering in the void, actually. To me, it secretly implies that they have started making amends without Madisson being there at the club. I mean, even if you look at the last week's game against City, the Community Shield, he was not starting the game. Although he did come on late. But the thing is, I feel they have identified Todd Cantwell as their replacement should James Madison move, or even Jesse Lingard as well. That's one of
Oh
the
yeah, I
options.
saw that Lingard. Yeah.
But yeah, I think if we take 60 million to Leicester, they would probably agree to the deal. But whether or not we would do that is again a question.
Actually, the question for me is whether or not we should be doing that. Because for me, Madison, I am not feeling the 60 million vibe from Madison. He's not someone who's going to come in and give us like 15 assists or 10 goals. No, I see him as like someone who could come in and give like 6 goals, 5 assists. And that is not enough value out of a player for 60 million for that position, right? He's not going to move the needle for Arsenal by a lot for us to spend that much money on a player who's going to give us just bits and parts. He might become something great, but at this moment, I don't see a 60 million tag on him being worth the money. So I am not sold on the Madison. What about you, Arun? Like, are you sold on the idea of Madison?
I think we should hijack Leicester's deal for Cantwell or like a left field choice in Lingard and get them instead of Madison. But yeah, and I am not convinced either. I don't think he's like a 60 million player, but of course there's English tax. If you add the English tax of 15 to 20 million, then maybe it makes sense that he is being sold for 60 million.
We already paid the English tax for this season with White.
Yeah, but when we are going for English players, it's unavoidable. The English tax is unavoidable. But you're right. I agree with you. I do not see him as being someone creating an impact like what a Bruno Fernandes does. Like even if he fails against the big six, Bruno manages to score goals against the rest of the team. He manages to do something against the remaining 14. And those 14 teams times 28 matches are a huge deal when you actually look at like the Premier League run of 38 games. So I do not think Madison is someone who is going to be giving us the same returns as like a Bruno Fernandes or like a Kevin De Bruyne. The kind of void that we are trying to fill, I am really not sure if this guy is going to be able to do it. But then again, let's look at the other options that we've been linked with for the other position. The other one's Odegaard. Odegaard is not someone who's going to bang 10 goals or give you 10 assists either, right? It seems like we are going for
but Odegaard is not going to cost us 60 million, right? The value for the money is what I'm worried about.
True. I think that's where like the point of the English tax comes in, because right now I think Odegaard is being valued at 35 or 40, right? That's around the valuation that they have for it. So in my head, Madison, with the added advantage of having played in the Premier League for close to 3 years, I think 3-4 years now, would be definitely at the base of it, be able to command something around 45, So this additional 10, 15, 20 million that we are playing is the English tax, and that's unavoidable. But in terms of impact, I do not know if he's going to be actually creating the impact that we want him to in terms of scoring goals, not assists, but more in terms of scoring goals when we're looking for a goal scoring.
We need more than one such player, in my opinion. Madison alone would just not be enough to turn a game around.
Ideally, we should be getting Madison and Awar, but I don't think Awar is happening. Well, I was very confident that it would, but given all our pursuits, it doesn't seem like.
But that is the point, Bob. So if we need 2 players, fine, but we are not going to get. So why are we going for Madison instead of we could have gone for Awar, who is going to create the similar kind of returns, right? Maybe not exactly the similar kind, but like we might get 5 goals out of him, maybe like 10 assists or 6 assists out of him, right? 6 to 10 assists out of him, and he would cost us just 25 million, which is a very smart investment when you consider 60 million and getting like 6 to 10 goals out of Madison. Right, that is the part that I'm not convinced about.
Yeah, see, I don't have much answers in terms of what's happening behind the scenes. Maybe they would have actually looked at some of the other performance stats, which makes Madison tick in all the boxes more than what Awar is. But I think from a simple logic perspective, he's sort of proven in the league. So he's actually known to people around, and then he actually brings something to the game, which we don't have anyone at the moment. And moreover, the fact that we made more of these mistakes in the recent past, if I could actually talk about players who've been performing exceptionally well in their clubs, Torreira, for example. So, and we managed to get them here only for them to, not perform to the way that they are expected to perform. And that's what I think they are taking the safer route by, even if they know that it's going to be costing them more, that they are taking the safer route of buying established players in the league who can come and slot in right away into the team.
But that didn't work for us too. We tried that with Peter Cech. We tried that with David Lewis. We tried that with Willian. All these are from the league who didn't work for us. So the whole point is, like, for me, it doesn't.
I think it might also have to do with the age profile of the player. Like Madisson is, I think he's 24 or 26, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. But the players that we got from Chelsea, they were all on the wrong side of 30, right? So I think this is something, maybe like the player profile, the age, the combination, like Bob said, of having played in the PL. He's sort of proven in the PL. It's not going to be like complete a different league where he's not used to the pace or the physicality of the league. He's going to be able to easily adapt, or at least that's what we expect, right? And that's the reason why we're probably paying premium.
Okay,
yeah. So I mean, if he comes into Arsenal, we are going to support him.
Again, yeah, I think with regards to the midfielders, the options that we have, at least what's being touted out is Madisson as option A. If the fallback options are Odegaard, and then or I don't know if it's the deal is almost dead, but that's actually the option C that we have. Option D is putting Nelson there and playing for 38 games.
Or just like keeping quiet, not doing
anything.
Yeah. So Bob, one question regarding that is, like, I mean, anyways, Madison, if he comes or whatever, we are going to see that. But there has been a talk about a guy called Daniel Vojvovic.
Dusan Vlahovic.
Dusan Vlahovic.
Dusan Vlahovic.
So yes, so he's a Fiorentina striker. He actually was in top form last season, and I think the season before as well. He's a decent player, so he's been looked at as an attacking option that we are pursuing. Lautaro Martinez deal is sort of, it's looks like it's not happening anytime at the moment, because Tottenham are moving ahead in the race. They are bracing themselves for the loss of Kane, and they would be, of course, with a lot of cash, that they would really want to buy a quality player from a quality team, and they're looking at Lautaro. So until or unless we stump up that 60 million cash, which Inter are asking, we won't be able to get him. Vlahovic is not again going to cost any cheaper as well. He's as well being valued between 50 to 60 million pounds, which is again a lot of money. But then he is actually a good striker. And then there is one more option as well. There's not been much spoken about in the press, but some are reporting that there is a player called Angel Correa in Lazio. It's as well a striker there. So that's again one of the players that we are being linked with at this moment. I mean, this apart from Tammy Abraham, who's already have a deal in principle with Roma. But yeah, I think it would be interesting to see where he would wish to move. If we actually wishes to just switch to Arsenal, should we pay up the cash, or he would go on to Roma? There.
It's interesting that after Euros, Arun, all the transfers seems to be about like Italy, right? Like Italian teams. There has not been, like, usually there will be a lot of talks about like players moving from German clubs, players moving from French leagues, players moving from Spanish leagues. But seems like this year it's like all Italian leagues. None from, like, I'm not getting linked to any of the, not seeing any links with any of the Spanish leagues, even selling or buying or any from, and we know that Spanish leagues are having the biggest problem. I mean, Barcelona let go of Messi, So Spanish leagues are teams are in cash crunch, but there has been no links.
Italy is poor. Right now, Italy is in a very bad situation. I agree. Yeah, Spain is bad too, but I think Italy are in such a bad situation that they have no revenue coming in. So that makes a huge difference, and they do not have enough money to free for player wages or to buy players. That's the reason why you have all of these players from the Italian clubs being on the transfer list. In England, they do not have any such issues. It's not that it's all rosy in England, but they at least are in a better position than Italy or Spain. So it is not really any sort of a problem that England is facing, which means that the other places where you have these issues are going to have all these players transfer listed. Germany has always been well run. Germany has never had financial issues. That's the reason why even if you see German players, they be all these like technical players, and generally German players. It's only recently that they've started like leaving Germany. Usually most of the time they tend to stay in Germany because if you're good, more often than not, Bayern would come and poach you from your club. So you do not have a say or option at that point. So that's the reason why we do not see a lot of play. It's only recently that we've seen like the likes of Havertz and Werner come in. And France too. If you're good, PSG is going to get you. Otherwise you're going to probably go for like a lower price at some other club and then build up from there. So Spain and Italy, the fact that Spain is also transfer listing a lot of the players. Like Barcelona seems to have everybody on the transfer list. And if you want, you can go and actually pick and choose whom you want. Madrid have made better business, but Barcelona, because of the bad financial disaster, is also having a lot of players. So it's the overall financial incapability of these two leagues that is probably like leading to you seeing a lot of players from these two leagues being transfer listed and being continuously linked with clubs in England.
I think with Inter scenario in particular is very different because they have almost every player on sale. Just because of the financial situation, they have not really quoted it out, but they have everyone on sale, and people are just waiting to poach players as they come through. Which is why Lukaku, even though he came in an interview and said he is happy with the new boss and he would like to stay, when the cash came, they couldn't really refuse, and he made up his mind to actually join back Chelsea. So that's likely going to happen with many of the other players. So possibly we might actually see more of these deals happen.
And I hope that there are some things moving with the market getting closer and the leagues all starting. So I think we would get a better picture going forward. Unless you guys have any other transfers that you want to discuss, I think we are almost at the stage where we could close this episode off. So that we would continue the transfer discussions.
Actually, I was going to bring up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to bring up Torreira into this because we have not spoken much about him, at least in terms of the transfer. What actually baffles me really is the fact that we've got a Olympic gold medalist in Martinelli who's come back to training straight from Tokyo, straight back into work. And for all the Copa America that they actually, with Torreira went on to play, he lost it in the quarterfinals, which was almost like a month ago, I think. And he hasn't come back to report back to training. I don't really understand what's really going on behind the scenes.
I read something about it. It's interesting you bring it up because I read something about it. Apparently, Portugal is one of the countries in the no travel list for UK. So he has not been able to, after the Copa, he was not allowed to go directly from, not Portugal, sorry, Uruguay. Yeah. Uruguay are in like a transfer red list for the UK. So he couldn't go directly to the UK from Uruguay. So he had to go to Spain, do his quarantine and everything in Spain. And now he's supposed to go to England. I don't know how true this is, but I read this somewhere yesterday. But that could possibly be a reason. But you're right. There seems to be no news or information about him when it's very obvious. Like he doesn't seem to have any place in the manager's plans. So I do not know. Maybe like his Arteta is going to surprise us on the last day by having him as the backup midfielder or something of that sort. I don't know. But you're never able to predict anything with this club nowadays.
That would not be a surprise, Arun. Surprise would be actually
Him getting sold.
No, surprise. Yeah, surprise obviously would be him getting sold. And then more obvious thing that we could look for is him signing a new deal.
Oh, yeah. No, but already I think his current deal runs up to 2024 or something, right? 23 or something. Because it's a 5-year deal that he signed whenever he joined. So I think it was 2019 up to 2024, if I'm not wrong.
2024.
Someone please stop these things. Like, I don't want to hear any more of players having.
There's still our problems, Vijay. We still have to talk about them until they have been. Please look now. We don't talk about Gunduzi or Saliba so far.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to talk about all these players. I'm fine. Like, let's move ahead. It's fine. We are 8th placed. We need to move about on the pitch, on the table. That's where I want my discussions to be. Not about how, where the deal is, what the wages are, nothing, right? I'm just, no, I don't want to talk about that. Anyways, about this transfers pod, it has been a really good time. We have discussed, I think, enough of the things that's there out there as rumors or market, whatever. So I think it's been a nice pod, guys. Thanks so much for joining in. Talk to you guys soon. And for the listeners, like, share, and subscribe. I have to say that.
Yes, please do like, share, and subscribe.
Yes, we would be very glad if you could comment on the topics, and we could have a discussion about it. Thanks so much, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.